Four architects sprinted through the glass doors of the Maxwell Tower as if fleeing an apocalypse. The first one was hyperventilating into a paper bag, his portfolio scattered across the marble lobby. The second walked in complete silence, eyes vacant like someone who'd just witnessed the death of their career. The third was already texting his therapist, demanding an emergency session. The fourth, a woman who designed buildings in war zones, stopped at the fountain, looked back at the gleaming skyscraper behind her, and whispered, "That woman up there isn't human. She's ice carved into the shape of a person," then ran without looking back. Maya Torres walked past all of them with a worn leather messenger bag over her shoulder, sneakers held together with superglue, and the calm expression of someone who'd already lost everything that mattered. She glanced at the chaos and muttered that some people really needed to develop thicker skin, adjusting the strap cutting into her shoulder. The Maxwell Tower rose before her like a monument to ambition. All steel and glass and sharp angles that seemed designed to cut anyone who dared approach. Security guards stood at every entrance, their eyes tracking her movement with cold assessment. Maya thought to herself that if she failed here, it wouldn't matter because failure had become her constant companion. The head of HR, a woman named Patricia Reeves who looked like she'd survived 3 corporate purges and a hostile takeover, stood at the executive elevator with a tablet and the weary expression of someone who'd stopped believing in hope years ago. Patricia looked Maya up and down, taking in the threadbare jacket, the dark circles under her eyes, the way she stood like someone ready to either collapse or fight, and asked if she was the new architect from the recruitment agency. Maya nodded and said that was her. Maya Torres, ready to start, extending her hand with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Patricia didn't shake it. Instead, she asked if Maya had read the contract. Maya said she had. Patricia asked if she'd read the entire contract, including the fine print about mandatory 70-hour work weeks, zero tolerance for errors, and immediate termination without severance for any failure to meet Victoria Maxwell's standards. Maya raised an eyebrow and said she particularly enjoyed the part about immediate termination. Very motivating. Patricia let out a long breath and said to listen carefully because Victoria Maxwell was impossible. Maya asked if she was impossible like demanding perfectionism or impossible like throwing staplers at people. Patricia answered that she was impossible like 17 architects in 9 months, and that didn't count the ones who quit during their first day. Maya blinked and said that was almost impressive, like some kind of Guinness World Record for being unbearable. Patricia said this wasn't a joke. Maya replied that she knew, but if she didn't laugh, she would cry, and she'd already cried enough for one lifetime. Besides, her mascara wasn't waterproof and she only had 1 tube left and couldn't afford another one. If you love stories about impossible odds, unforgettable characters, and finding love in the coldest places, hit that like button, share this with someone who needs inspiration, and subscribe so you never miss what happens next. Now let's see what happens when a broken architect meets the woman made of ice. Patricia turned and began walking without checking whether Maya was keeping up, her heels striking the polished floor like the countdown to an execution. Maya followed, forcing herself not to gawk at her surroundings. The lobby of Maxwell Tower was larger than the entire apartment she'd once shared with Daniel, its ceiling soaring 3 stories high, a massive crystal installation hanging like frozen lightning. Enormous photographs lined the walls, each one depicting a building Victoria Maxwell had designed, and not a single one looking like a place where humans actually lived. Patricia led her to a private elevator that required both a keycard and a fingerprint scan. As they ascended, Patricia said that Victoria Maxwell's office occupied the entire 48th floor. She worked 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, and expected everyone around her to match that dedication. She had built Maxwell architecture from nothing into the most prestigious firm in North America in just 12 years. She was also, Patricia added carefully, the most difficult person Maya would ever work for. Maya asked what made her so difficult. Patricia was quiet for a moment before saying that Victoria didn't believe in work-life balance, didn't care about personal problems, and had zero patience for anything less than perfection. She'd once made a senior architect redo an entire mall design because one window was 3 centimeters off specification. She'd fired someone for arriving 4 minutes late to a meeting. She'd rejected a project that won international awards because it didn't meet her internal standards. Maya swallowed and asked why Patricia was telling her all this. Patricia replied that of the 17 architects who'd left, 12 had cried in her office, 3 had quit via email without notice, and 2 had needed medical leave for stress-related breakdowns. She wanted Maya to know what she was walking into. The elevator doors opened onto a space that took Maya's breath away. The entire floor was one enormous office with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. Drafting tables, computer stations, and architectural models filled the space in precise arrangements. Everything was white, chrome, and glass. Not a single personal photograph or decoration anywhere. It looked less like an office and more like a laboratory where humans were studied rather than welcomed. And at the center of it all, standing before a wall of blueprints, was Victoria Maxwell. She was tall, at least 5'10", with platinum blonde hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful, wearing a white suit that probably cost more than Maya earned in 6 months. When she turned, Maya saw a face that could have been carved from marble. High cheekbones, ice-blue eyes, and a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. Victoria looked at Maya the way someone might examine a stain on expensive fabric, and when she spoke, her voice was crystalline and sharp. She asked Patricia what this was. Patricia said this was Maya Torres, the new architect. Victoria's eyes traveled over Maya's cheap shoes, wrinkled jacket, and worn bag like she was cataloging defects. She said she'd asked for an architect, not someone who looked like they'd been sleeping in a subway station. The words hit Maya like a slap, but she'd been hit before. She replied that appearances could be deceiving, and she was here to design buildings, not model clothing. Victoria's eyes narrowed. She said she didn't have time for architects with attitudes. Patricia turned to leave, but Victoria's voice stopped her. Give her the Riverside project. Patricia's face went pale. The one that's due in 2 weeks? The one that the last 3 architects couldn't? 2 weeks, Victoria interrupted. If she's actually an architect and not just someone who wandered in off the street, she should be able to handle it. She turned back to her blueprints, dismissing Maya without another word. Patricia led Maya to a desk in the corner, the one farthest from Victoria's station. She handed Maya a thick folder and whispered that the Riverside project was a mixed-use development that had been in hell for 4 months. 3 architects had tried and failed to create something Victoria would approve. The client was threatening to pull out. If Maya couldn't deliver something acceptable in 2 weeks, she'd be gone like all the others. Maya opened the folder and her heart sank. The site was a nightmare, an irregular plot wedged between a historic district and a highway, with height restrictions, environmental concerns, and a client who wanted luxury residential, commercial space, and public park area all in one impossible design. She looked across the office at Victoria, who was marking up blueprints with sharp, angry strokes of red pen. Maya thought about the $300,000 in debt crushing her, the bankruptcy that would destroy what little remained of her life, the nights sleeping in her car because she couldn't afford rent after Daniel's medical bills. She had 2 weeks to do what 3 qualified architects couldn't do. 2 weeks to impress a woman who seemed determined to hate her. Maya opened her laptop and got to work. For the first week, Maya barely saw Victoria except as a distant figure moving through the office like a shark through water. But she heard her. Everyone heard her. This is garbage. Start over. Did you even look at the building codes? I could train a computer algorithm to design better than this. Maya watched architects twice her age receive these assessments and leave with shaking hands. She kept her head down and worked. 16 hours a day. Then 18. She slept 3 hours a night on the couch in the break room, showered in the building gym, and lived on coffee and whatever food she could afford from the vending machine. The Riverside project was impossible, but Maya had spent the last year doing impossible things. She'd kept Daniel alive for 8 months when doctors said 6. She'd worked 3 jobs to pay for treatments that didn't work. She'd survived losing the man she loved and waking up alone with debt so massive it would take 20 years to repay. An impossible building design was nothing compared to that. She approached it like a puzzle. The irregular plot became an opportunity for unique architecture. The height restrictions meant she could create terraced levels with rooftop gardens. The highway noise problem could be solved with strategic positioning of the commercial space as a sound buffer. She designed flowing curves instead of straight lines, making the building look like it was growing organically from the landscape. On day 13, at 2 in the morning, Maya finished. She sent the designs to the printer and sat back, her eyes burning with exhaustion. She'd done everything she could. If it wasn't good enough, at least she'd know she'd tried. She must have fallen asleep at her desk because she woke to the sound of heels clicking across the floor. She jerked upright to find Victoria standing beside her desk, holding Maya's printed designs. Victoria's ice-blue eyes scanned the papers, her face revealing nothing. The silence stretched so long that Maya's heart began to pound. Finally, Victoria spoke. "This is acceptable." Maya blinked. "Acceptable. I said what I said. The design is acceptable. Send it to the client." Victoria turned to walk away, but Maya's voice stopped her. "Just acceptable. Not good. Not excellent. Just acceptable." Victoria turned back, one eyebrow raised. "You want praise." Maya stood, exhaustion making her reckless. "I want honesty. I've been here for 2 weeks. I've slept maybe 30 hours total. I've worked harder on this project than I've worked on anything in my life. And all you can say is acceptable. Most people would be grateful their work wasn't thrown in the trash. I'm not most people. And I didn't come here to do acceptable work. I came here to design buildings that matter." Victoria stepped closer, her eyes like blue ice in sunlight. "You came here because you're desperate. Because you have crushing debt and nowhere else would hire you after your last firm collapsed. Don't pretend you're here out of passion." The words were true, and they hurt precisely because of that truth. But Maya refused to look away. "You're right. I am desperate. But desperation doesn't mean I don't care about the work. Maybe you've forgotten what it's like to care about something other than perfection." For just a moment, something flickered in Victoria's eyes. Something that looked almost like recognition. Then the ice returned. "Be here at 8 tomorrow. We're presenting to the Riverside client at 10. She walked away, and Maya collapsed back into her chair, her hands shaking. The presentation went flawlessly. The client loved the design, signed the contract on the spot, and told Victoria she'd outdone herself. Victoria didn't correct them or mention Maya's name. Afterward, back in the office, Maya expected some acknowledgement. A thank you. A good job. Anything. Instead, Victoria dropped 3 new project folders on her desk and said, "These are due in 3 weeks. Don't disappoint me." Maya stared at the folders, then at Victoria's retreating back. She thought about quitting, about walking out right then. But $300,000 in debt didn't care about dignity. She opened the first folder and started working. The pattern continued for 2 months. Maya would complete impossible projects. Victoria would call them acceptable or adequate, and immediately assign new work. Never praise. Never recognition. Just more demands. Maya watched other architects break under the pressure. A man named Richard, who'd been with the firm for 5 years, quit after Victoria rejected his design for the 7th time. A woman named Susan started crying during a review meeting and never came back. But Maya didn't break. Not because she was stronger, but because she'd already been broken. This was nothing compared to watching the man she loved die by inches. Late one night in her 3rd month, Maya was alone in the office, or so she thought. She was working on a residential tower design, and something wasn't right. The proportions felt off, but she couldn't identify the problem. "The upper floors are too heavy." Maya jumped and turned to find Victoria standing behind her, looking at the screen. "The what?" "Your design. The upper floors have too much mass relative to the base. It feels unstable, even though structurally it's sound. The human eye knows when proportions are wrong." Victoria leaned over Maya's shoulder, close enough that Maya could smell her perfume, something expensive and cold, like winter flowers. Victoria's hand moved the mouse, adjusting the design with swift, precise movements. C. Pull back the top 3 floors by 2 meters. Reduce the window sizing on the eastern face. Now it's balanced. Maya looked at the revised design, and Victoria was right. It was better. Substantially better. How did you see that so quickly? Victoria straightened, the warmth of her proximity vanishing. It's my job to see what others miss. She turned to leave, but Maya's curiosity overrode her caution. Why are you here this late? Victoria paused. I could ask you the same question. I asked first. Victoria looked at her for a long moment, and Maya noticed for the first time that she looked tired. Not just tired, exhausted. There were shadows under those ice-blue eyes, lines of tension around her mouth. I'm here because this is where I belong, Victoria finally said. Buildings don't betray you. They don't leave. They don't die. They just stand, exactly as you designed them, for decades. The vulnerability in those words caught Maya off guard. She heard the echo of her own pain in them. They don't love you back either, Maya said softly. Victoria's expression hardened. Love is an architect's worst enemy. It makes you soft, makes you compromise, makes you put people before the work. And that's bad. That's fatal. To your career, to your reputation, to everything you've built. Victoria walked away, and Maya sat in the silence, wondering what had happened to make Victoria Maxwell build walls higher than any of her buildings. The breakthrough came during Maya's 4th month, on the Westbrook Cultural Center project. Maya had been working on it for 3 weeks, trying to design a building that honored the neighborhood's artistic history while being modern enough to attract new visitors. She'd gone through 12 iterations, and Victoria had rejected them all. On the 13th attempt, Maya did something different. She stopped trying to please Victoria and started designing from her heart. She created a building that twisted like a dancer mid-spin, with walls of colored glass that would cast rainbow patterns across the plaza. It was bold, unconventional, nothing like Victoria's usual clean, minimalist style. She submitted it expecting rejection. Instead, Victoria called her into the private office, the glass-walled sanctuary where no one was allowed, and told her to close the door. Maya's heart pounded as she sat in the chair across from Victoria's desk. Victoria had the designs spread out before her. She studied them in silence for so long that Maya began to sweat. Finally, Victoria looked up. This is extraordinary. Maya wasn't sure she'd heard correctly. What? Your design. It's extraordinary. Completely wrong for what the client thinks they want, but exactly what they need. It's the best work I've seen from anyone in this office in 2 years. Maya felt heat rise to her face. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm not giving you a compliment. I'm stating a fact. Victoria stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. But you're going to have a problem. What kind of problem? The client specifically requested something traditional. They're going to hate this. Then why did you call it extraordinary? Victoria turned back, and for the first time, Maya saw something that might have been a smile on that cold face. Because I'm going to present it to them myself. And I'm going to make them understand why they're wrong. The presentation was scheduled for the next afternoon. Maya sat in the conference room, surrounded by the client board. 8 conservative businesspeople who clearly wanted something safe and boring. Victoria commanded the room the moment she entered. She didn't ask permission or build up slowly. She simply showed them Maya's design and told them it was brilliant. You came to me because you wanted a building that would put your cultural center on the map. This will do that. Yes, it's unconventional. Yes, it will make people uncomfortable at first. But great architecture isn't about comfort. It's about making people feel something they've never felt before. One board member, a gray-haired man with expensive cufflinks, objected that it didn't fit the neighborhood character. Victoria's eyes could have cut glass. The neighborhood character is dying. You need something that will bring people back, not something that will blend into irrelevance. She defended the design for 40 minutes, dismantling every objection with precision and passion. Maya watched in awe as Victoria fought for her work with the intensity of a general defending a strategic position. In the end, the client approved it. Not because they were convinced, but because Victoria Maxwell had made it impossible to say no. Afterward, as they rode the elevator back to the office, Maya said, "Thank you for fighting for the design." Victoria didn't look at her. "I wasn't fighting for your design. I was fighting for good architecture. It's the same thing." "No, it isn't." The elevator doors opened, but Victoria didn't immediately exit. She turned to Maya, her expression unreadable. "Don't make the mistake of thinking I care about you, Maya. I care about the work. When your work is excellent, I'll support it. When it isn't, I'll destroy it. That's all this is." But Maya noticed Victoria had used her first name for the first time. Not Torres. Not the architect. Maya. That night, Maya stayed late again, working on preliminary sketches for a new project. Around midnight, Victoria appeared with 2 cups of coffee and set one on Maya's desk without a word. Maya looked at the coffee, then at Victoria. "What's this?" "It's called coffee. People drink it to stay awake." "I know what coffee is. I'm asking why you brought it to me." Victoria sat in the chair beside Maya's desk, which was shocking enough on its own. Victoria never sat with anyone. She stood above, distant and unreachable. "Because you're going to be here until 3 in the morning, and the coffee in the break room is garbage." They worked in silence for a while, Victoria reviewing contracts while Maya sketched. It was strangely comfortable, like they'd done this 100 times before. Finally, Maya asked the question that had been burning in her mind for months. "Why are you like this?" Victoria didn't look up from her contract. "Like what?" "Cold. Impossible. Why do you work so hard to make everyone hate you?" Victoria's pen paused mid-signature. "I don't work to make people hate me. I work to make sure the buildings are perfect. If people hate me as a side effect, that's their problem." "But doesn't it bother you? Being alone?" Now Victoria did look up, her ice blue eyes meeting Maya's dark brown ones. "I'm not alone. I have my buildings. Buildings aren't people." "Exactly. They're better." Maya leaned back in her chair. "Someone hurt you. Hurt you badly enough that you decided buildings were safer than people." Victoria's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes flickered. "You don't know anything about me. I know that every word I just said was true, because I recognize it. I've been there." "Where?" "The place where you decide it's easier to be alone than risk being broken again." Victoria stood abruptly. "Get back to work. This isn't a therapy session." She walked away, but the coffee cup remained on Maya's desk, still warm. The walls began to crack during the office holiday party. Maya hadn't wanted to attend, forced socializing with co-workers who either ignored her or resented her, but Patricia had insisted it was mandatory. The party was held in a rented penthouse downtown, with catering and an open bar and the kind of fake festivity that made Maya's skin crawl. She stood in the corner, nursing a glass of wine and counting the minutes until she could leave, when Patricia approached with a concerned expression. "Have you seen Victoria?" "Why would I have seen Victoria?" "Because she always leaves these parties after exactly 30 minutes, but she's been here for an hour and she's—" Patricia nodded toward the bar. Maya followed her gaze and saw Victoria, still immaculately dressed but with her hair slightly disheveled, drinking what looked like her 4th or 5th glass of champagne. Victoria never drank. Never showed any sign of being less than completely controlled. Maya walked over and said quietly, "Victoria." Victoria turned, and her eyes were slightly unfocused. "Maya. The architect who asks too many questions. Maybe you should slow down. Maybe you should mind your own business." But Victoria's words lacked their usual bite. She actually sounded sad. Maya made a decision. She took the champagne glass from Victoria's hand, ignored her protest, and said, "Come on. I'm getting you out of here. I don't need." "Yes, you do. Don't make a scene." Something in Maya's tone must have registered because Victoria followed her out of the party without further argument. They took a taxi to Victoria's penthouse apartment. Of course, Victoria lived in a penthouse, and Maya helped her inside. The apartment was exactly what Maya expected. Minimalist, expensive, perfect, and completely devoid of personality. It looked like a hotel room for a guest who'd never arrived. Victoria collapsed on the white leather sofa and said, "You shouldn't be here." Maya sat beside her. "Probably not. But here I am anyway." "Why do you do that?" "Do what?" "Stay. Everyone else leaves. Why do you stay?" Maya thought about it. "Because I recognize you. You don't know me. I know that every word you say is designed to push people away. I know you work yourself to exhaustion so you don't have to think. I know you pour everything into your buildings because buildings can't hurt you. I know all of this because I've done exactly the same thing for the last year and a half." Victoria looked at her with those ice blue eyes, and for the first time, the ice was melting. "Why? Why what? Why did you do those things? What hurt you that badly?" Maya took a breath. "His name was Daniel. We were going to get married. Then he got sick. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors said 6 months. I said no, we'll fight it. So we fought. For 8 months we fought. I borrowed money I'll never be able to repay. I worked 3 jobs. I did everything. But he died anyway. He died anyway. And his last words to me were, 'Thank you for trying.' Not, 'I love you.' Not, 'Goodbye.' Just, 'Thank you for trying.' Like I'd done him a favor by prolonging his suffering." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Her name was Alison." Maya went still, barely breathing, afraid that any movement would make Victoria stop talking. "We met in graduate school. She was studying art history. I was in architecture. She used to say that I designed the buildings and she would fill them with beauty. We were going to get married. We had the venue booked. The invitations printed. Everything. What happened?" Victoria's voice dropped to barely a whisper. 3 weeks before the wedding, I was offered the opportunity of a lifetime. A chance to join the most prestigious firm in Europe. But I'd have to leave immediately. Move to London. Work 100-hour weeks for 2 years. Alison said it was fine, that we'd make it work, that love could survive distance. Maya could hear where this was going. But I couldn't do it. Couldn't split my focus between the work and a relationship. Couldn't be the architect I needed to be while worrying about someone else. So I called off the wedding. Told Alison that my career had to come first. That I wasn't capable of being the partner she deserved. What did she say? She said I was choosing to be alone. That I was using my career as an excuse to avoid letting anyone get close. She said that one day I'd wake up and realize I'd built an empire of buildings but had no one to share it with. Then she left, and I went to London, and I became Victoria Maxwell, and she was right. About all of it. Victoria looked at Maya, and there were tears in her ice blue eyes. Every building I've designed is trying to prove that I made the right choice. But I'm not sure I did. And now it's too late to change it. Maya took Victoria's hand, and Victoria didn't pull away. It's never too late. It is for me. I'm 41 years old. I've spent 20 years building walls. I don't know how to let anyone in anymore. You're letting me in right now. Victoria looked down at their joined hands. Why aren't you afraid of me? Because I've already faced the worst thing that can happen to a person. I've watched someone I love die. Everything else is just details. They sat in silence, hands clasped, 2 broken people finding unexpected comfort in shared pain. Victoria's voice was so quiet Maya almost missed it. Stay. Just tonight. I don't want to be alone. Maya stayed. They talked until dawn about everything and nothing. About buildings and love and loss and the impossible weight of trying to be perfect. When the sun rose over the city, painting Victoria's white apartment in shades of gold, something had shifted between them. Victoria looked at Maya and said, I don't know how to do this. Do what? Be human. Let someone matter. You're already doing it. Monday morning, Maya arrived at the office expecting everything to return to normal. But Victoria called her into the private office first thing and closed the door. About Friday night, Victoria began, her voice carefully neutral. You don't have to say anything. Yes, I do. I was unprofessional. I shouldn't have. You were human. There's a difference. Victoria looked at her, and Maya saw the war happening behind those ice-blue eyes. The desire to retreat back behind walls versus the terrifying vulnerability of staying open. I want to try something, Victoria said finally. I want to try not being alone. With you. But I don't know if I can. Then we'll figure it out together. It won't be easy. I'm difficult. Maya laughed. I've worked for you for 5 months. I'm aware. For the first time since Maya had known her, Victoria smiled. Not a professional smile. A real one. Dinner. Tonight. Let me cook for you. You cook. I studied in France for a year. I learned. Victoria Maxwell has a skill that isn't architecture. I'm shocked. Don't push your luck, Torres. That night, Maya discovered that Victoria could indeed cook, and that her apartment was capable of feeling warm when someone was actually living in it rather than just existing there. They talked about architecture and childhood and what it meant to start over. At the end of the night, as Maya was getting ready to leave, Victoria stopped her. I'm going to fail at this. Probably multiple times. I'm going to work too much and forget to call and say the wrong things. I'm going to be the same impossible person I've always been. Maya stepped closer. And I'm going to be the person who carries crushing guilt about her dead fiancé and sometimes can't get out of bed because the weight of it is too much. I'm going to have days where I can't be what you need because I'm barely surviving myself. We're both disasters. That's not encouraging. I'm not trying to encourage you. I'm trying to be honest. This won't be perfect. But maybe it doesn't have to be perfect to be real. Victoria kissed her. It was tentative and uncertain, and absolutely nothing like the controlled woman Maya had known for 5 months. It was human and vulnerable and terrifying and wonderful. When they pulled apart, Victoria whispered, I'm scared. Me too. Let's be scared together. The next 6 months were messy and complicated and sometimes painful. Victoria didn't magically become warm and open. She still worked impossible hours and demanded perfection, and sometimes forgot that relationships required attention. Maya still carried her grief like a stone in her chest, and sometimes pushed Victoria away when she got too close. They fought. God, did they fight. About work boundaries and time, and the fact that Victoria still called Maya's designs adequate in public, even though she called them brilliant in private. About Maya's refusal to talk about Daniel and Victoria's inability to express emotion without drinking first. But they also learned, slowly, painfully, how to be two damaged people trying to build something new from broken pieces. The turning point came during the Harrison Tower project. It was the biggest commission Maxwell Architecture had ever received, a 60-story mixed-use tower that would reshape the city skyline. Victoria assigned Maya as co-lead designer, which caused immediate resentment among senior architects who'd been with the firm for years. Maya and Victoria worked on the project together, their different styles clashing and merging into something neither could have created alone. Victoria's precision and Maya's creativity. Victoria's structure and Maya's emotion. They spent countless late nights at the office, arguing over every detail. One night, during a particularly heated argument about the building's crown design, Victoria snapped. You're being stubborn just to be stubborn. And you're being controlling because you can't handle anyone else's ideas being better than yours. Your ideas aren't better, they're just different. Exactly. Different. Something this firm desperately needs. They stared at each other, both breathing hard, and then Victoria did something that shocked them both. She laughed. A real, genuine laugh. We're arguing about architecture at 2 in the morning. We're exactly the same kind of crazy. Maya laughed too. Is that your way of saying you love me? Victoria's laughter stopped. She looked at Maya, her expression suddenly serious. Yes. I think it is. It was the first time either of them had said it. Maya crossed the distance between them. Say it properly then. I love you. I love your stubbornness and your creativity and the way you're not afraid of me. I love that you make me want to be better. I love that you see buildings the way I do, as living things that matter. I love you too. I love that you're secretly soft underneath all that ice. I love that you fight for good architecture even when it's hard. I love that you're learning how to be human again, and you're letting me be part of that. They kissed, surrounded by blueprints and coffee cups and the bones of the building they were creating together. The Harrison Tower presentation was scheduled for a Friday afternoon. The client board, city planning officials, and architecture critics would all be there. It was the most important presentation of Victoria's career. That morning, Maya woke up and couldn't breathe. Panic attack. They came sometimes, usually on dates significant to Daniel. Today would have been their 5th wedding anniversary. She called Victoria, sobbing, and said she couldn't do it. Couldn't do the presentation. Couldn't face all those people. Couldn't function. Victoria arrived at Maya's apartment 20 minutes later. She didn't tell Maya to pull herself together or remind her how important the presentation was. She just held her and said, "Breathe with me." They sat on the floor of Maya's tiny apartment, breathing together until Maya's heart rate slowed. "Tell me about him," Victoria said. "What? Daniel. You never talk about him. Tell me." So Maya did. She told Victoria about how Daniel would leave notes in her drafting supplies. How he'd believed in her when she didn't believe in herself. How he'd made her laugh during the darkest times. How she still felt guilty for being happy now, as if happiness was a betrayal of his memory. Victoria listened without judgment and then said, "Love isn't finite. You can love him and love me. You can miss him and build a future with me. You can carry him with you while still moving forward. It's not betrayal. It's honoring him by continuing to live." Maya looked at this woman who'd spent 20 years afraid to feel anything, now teaching her how to hold multiple truths at once. "I don't know if I can do the presentation." "Then we'll do it together. I'll take the lead if you need me to. Or we'll reschedule. The building matters, but you matter more." It was the first time Victoria had ever put a person before architecture. They did the presentation together. Maya stumbled at first, her voice shaking, but Victoria was there beside her, steady and strong. When Maya's hands trembled too badly to advance the slides, Victoria did it for her. When Maya lost her place in her notes, Victoria seamlessly picked up the thread. The client loved it. The critics called it revolutionary. The city approved it unanimously. Afterward, as everyone celebrated, Victoria found Maya on the building's terrace, looking out at the city. "You did it," Victoria said. "We did it." "No. You did it. You showed up on the hardest day and you did the work anyway. That's courage." Maya turned to face her. "I couldn't have done it without you." Maybe that's the point. Maybe we're not supposed to do hard things alone. 6 months later, the Harrison Tower broke ground. Maya and Victoria stood at the construction site, wearing hard hats and high-visibility vests, watching the first steel beams rise into the sky. "It's real now," Maya said. "Not just drawings. Real." Victoria took her hand. "Like us." Maya smiled. "Are you getting sentimental, Victoria Maxwell?" "Absolutely not. I'm simply acknowledging objective facts." "Right. Objective facts. I'm also objectively moving in with you. Maya's head snapped around. What? My lease is up next month. Your apartment is terrible. We spend every night together anyway. It makes logical sense to cohabitate. That's the least romantic way anyone has ever suggested moving in together. Victoria smiled, that rare beautiful smile that Maya had learned to treasure. Fine. Maya Torres, I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to argue about architecture over breakfast and design buildings together and build a life that's ours. Move in with me. Or let me move in with you. I don't care where we live as long as we're together. Better. Is that a yes? It's definitely a yes. They moved into a new apartment together, one with space for both of their drafting tables and terrible fashion sense when it came to furniture, but which felt like home in a way nowhere had felt since Daniel died, since Alison left. The office began to change too. Slowly. Victoria learned to give praise publicly, not just privately. She instituted reasonable work hours and hired enough staff that no one had to work 18-hour days regularly. She still demanded excellence, but she'd learned the difference between demanding perfection and demanding humanity. Maya learned to set boundaries, to take days off, to let herself be happy without drowning in guilt. She started a small pro bono program designing affordable housing, and Victoria supported it even though it meant less billable hours. 1 year after they'd moved in together, Victoria proposed. Not with a grand gesture or public display, but during a quiet Sunday morning while they were both working on sketches at their respective drafting tables. Victoria simply said, "Marry me." Maya looked up. What? Marry me. I want to be your wife. I want to design our life together with the same intention we design our buildings. I want forever with you. Maya crossed to Victoria's table and saw what Victoria had been sketching, a small chapel design. Simple, elegant, with walls of glass that would let in light. Did you design this for us? For you. For us. For the wedding I hope you'll say yes to. Maya kissed her, tasting coffee and tears and future. Yes. Absolutely yes. They were married 6 months later in the chapel Victoria had designed, with Patricia as Maya's maid of honor and the entire office in attendance. It was small and perfect and nothing like the grand wedding Victoria had planned with Alison or the traditional ceremony Maya had imagined with Daniel. It was theirs. During her vows, Victoria said, "I spent 20 years building walls. Then you walked into my office with taped-together shoes and refused to leave when I tried to drive you away. You taught me that walls aren't the same as strength. That vulnerability isn't weakness. That love isn't a distraction from great work. It's what makes great work meaningful. You are my partner in architecture and in life, and I choose you every day." Maya said, "I thought I was coming to your office to design buildings. Instead, I found someone who taught me that it's possible to love again after loss. That carrying the past doesn't mean you can't build a future. That two broken people can create something whole together. You are my foundation, my inspiration, and my home. I choose you every day for all our days." 5 years later, Victoria and Maya stood in front of the completed Riverside Tower, now the centerpiece of the city skyline. 60 stories of steel and glass and their combined vision, with a dedication plaque at the entrance that read, "Designed by Victoria Maxwell and Maya Torres." Built on the foundation of hope. They'd completed 17 major projects together, won countless awards, and built Maxwell Torres architecture into something that honored both precision and creativity, structure and emotion. But standing there looking up at their building, Maya wasn't thinking about awards or recognition. She was thinking about the journey. About the impossible woman she'd been terrified of 5 years ago, who turned out to be just as broken and scared as she was. About how they'd learned to love with scars and build with broken pieces. Victoria squeezed her hand. "What are you thinking about?" "About how I walked into your office expecting hell and found home instead." "That's objectively inaccurate. I was definitely hell for at least the first few months." "You were absolutely hell. Impossible. Unbearable." But you stayed. But I stayed. Victoria pulled Maya close, and they stood together as people walked past their building, living and working in the space they'd created from nothing but determination and stubbornness and eventually, love. I'm glad you stayed, Victoria whispered. Me too. And as the sun set behind the Harrison Tower, painting the glass in shades of gold and rose, two women who'd thought they were too broken to be fixed stood whole in each other's arms. Proof that sometimes the most impossible buildings are the ones we build around our own hearts, and sometimes all it takes is one person brave enough to knock on the door. This story reminds us that strength isn't about having no weaknesses. It's about letting someone see your weaknesses and trusting they'll stay. It shows us that love after loss is possible, that walls built for protection can become prisons, and that the scariest thing isn't being broken, but having the courage to let someone help put the pieces back together. If you've ever felt too damaged to be loved, too scared to try again, or too broken to build something beautiful, remember Victoria and Maya. Remember that somewhere out there is someone who will see your scars and choose to stay anyway. Have you ever met someone who seemed impossible, only to discover they were just protecting a wounded heart? Have you ever been the one with walls so high you forgot how to let people in? Share your story in the comments. We want to hear from you. If this story touched your heart, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to know that it's never too late to start again. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss the stories that remind us what it means to be beautifully, messily human. Thank you for staying with us through this journey. May you find the courage to knock down your walls, the strength to love after loss, and the hope to believe in beginnings that bloom from endings. Until next time, remember, you are never too broken to be loved, only too afraid to try.